fuel. Hello everyone, and welcome back to A Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. I hope you had an amazing Christmas and Santa brought you more than just coal like he did me. Just kidding, my Christmas was great. I was technically a good boy last year. Fun fact, this is going to be the last Scotch and a Beer of the year. Until next Monday when it's January of 2020. In the last episode, I blabbed on and on about my 401k and how I got screwed by a talent agency because I have no talent, and how I started to feel better about it because I had a really rad proposal, but then again how those bad feelings started creeping up right before SEMA. In this episode, I would be talking about how that feeling would actually start to really manifest towards the end of SEMA. I'll also talk about my first couple of days at my second ever SEMA, in which I was there for business instead of pleasure. Totally different experience, I might add. But first, Scotch and a beer. For the beer, I'm going to do a Warsteiner. Das einzig wahr. I know Jaywood's going to hate the way that I just pronounced that, but this is a German Pilsner. Which is funny because Pilsners are Czech. My wife is Czech, and so technically this is a Czech-German beer. And it's a solid choice as always. Now, speaking of my wife, she was wonderful enough to get me a Scotch that I've kind of been lusting after for quite some time that is called the Glenlivet Code. Now you're supposed to do some fancy stuff and go to this website and unlock the tasting notes, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to taste it and tell you how it makes me feel. And it is a really cool black bottle. So again, thank you, beautiful, wonderful wife, whom I love very much, for this amazing Christmas present. I am going to enjoy it thoroughly. Oh, one other thing that she got me, I wanted to kind of go over this as well. It's a Scotch, I know it looks like a crack pipe, but it's a way to get the perfect amount of drops into your Scotch. So it's a really fancy hand-blown glass dropper for Scotches called the Angel Share, made in Scotland. So thanks, babe, for that as well. This is going to be a great combo here today. Smell lots of fruits, apples, toffee, caramel. I feel like this would be a great Halloween style, maybe even candy corns. Something along that nature is really sweet to the nose, but let's give it a try. Well, like the Scotch is an enigma, the taste is also an enigma. I'm having a very, very hard time. Normally when I taste a Scotch, I can immediately be like, oh, to me this tastes like X, or this tastes like X. But with this one, and it's changing as time is going by right now, I'm going to have to take another sip. Time out. So I do taste fruit. I'm not sure if it's apples, it might be pears. It's fantastic. I love that it's changing so much. Oh, this is a great Scotch. Thank you, babe, for such a wonderful Scotch. So now that I have the Scotch and the beer taken care of, it's time to move on to the rest of the story. So I had just written 2 $5,000 checks, aka charged the old brand new credit card to the talent agency Connexions with an X. I was now $10K in debt with nothing but a proposal to show for it. Luckily, SEMA was coming up. In which case, this would be the last hurrah, my last chance to get something out of this talent agency. Literally, this was the last chance, because once SEMA hits, That's it. Most companies have even already set their budgets by SEMA, and people go there to kind of solidify deals and so on and so forth. So this was the last chance to get monetary sponsorship for my 2014 Formula D season. Now, Matt said he would meet us out there day one and we would hit the ground running. He had meetings lined up. We didn't, but we were going to go hustle our asses off to try to get some meetings sometime during that week. And so Keith from Factory Edge and I headed out to SEMA, and we met up with Matt Delawder from Connexions with an X the night before, where somehow I think I ended up paying for our steak dinner. Anyway, that's a different story altogether. We get a good night's sleep. We wake up at like 6 o'clock in the morning so that we can deal with traffic on the way there and the lines and everything else that had to do with getting our actual passes and so on and so forth. So we got all of that dialed and we hit the ground running. Day one of SEMA, Matt texted us in the morning and said, hey, I got 4 meetings on you guys' behalf, so I'm going to be out for the first half of the day, but let's rendezvous for lunch and we'll kind of go over things from there. He was going to handle that side of the business, and we, like I said, were going to manually check company to company to company to company and propose ourselves for sponsorship. And he said if you got any leads to let him know, and then he would go back over there and kind of solidify things and make deals that way. Cool, we'll do that. So we were double teaming SEMA. Like I said, this was my second SEMA, so I wasn't there just to oogle at all of the cool cars and talk to people, and I was actually there for business. I was pitching myself as a professional athlete, which is a totally different deal than just being at SEMA. SEMA's overwhelming, so I'm really glad this wasn't my first one, because you just can't. You can't be there to oogle and be there to get sponsorship. You have to get one out of the way first and then do the other. That's just science. Now, Keith and I hit the ground running right into heartbreak. And if you don't know SEMA, the main hall is where all the big companies go that can afford large booth space. And we quickly found out that we were not high enough on the totem pole to even be asking for meetings with these people. So we headed out to some of the smaller halls where there are Chinese manufacturers and off-brands that you've never heard of and all of this other stuff. And we literally started just going booth to booth to booth to booth to booth. Can we have 5 minutes of time with your marketing director or marketing manager? I'd like to talk to you about sponsorship for Formula D 2014. We had these cool little flyers that we had made up as well, like a little one-pager, so that if they did want to come in, we'd bring in our actual flip chart proposal that the Connexions with an X guys had made me, my $10,000 proposal. To which we were met again with heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. No, we're not interested in drifting. What is drifting? Why would we want to sponsor that? There's literally no reason for us to sponsor that. We can give you discount on products. And I'm like, I can't use crowbars. I'm asking. We were going from Chinese tool manufacturers to off-brand glove companies. Nobody wanted Officer Dan. Half a day goes by. We are now going to meet Matt from Connexions with an X at lunch. And he says he's had 3 meetings on our behalf, and he said that they went decently well. He asked us how our day was going. It's like, we've talked to 40 companies and have 0 chance of getting a sponsorship from any of them. I have this stack of useless business cards, but hey, that's all I had to show for it. Literally a stack of business cards, and that's it. Matt said he had 2 more meetings lined up on our behalf that day, and probably another 6 to 10 for the rest of the week. And we're like, cool, at least you're making some progress, because we sure as hell aren't. We came in swinging and ended up coming out beaten the hell up and dejected. Ooh, message. After a very expensive lunch, again, paid for by me, not that I just gave these dudes 10 grand to buy me lunch or something, whatever. Pitch after pitch after pitch and a growing stack of business cards that would do us absolutely 0 good. The marketing manager was busy, the marketing manager was out, the marketing manager was getting a snack. The amount of excuses these companies have when they clearly don't want to talk to you is insane. Like, hey, we just need 5 minutes of your day. I know you guys are really busy, but 5 minutes will give you a pitch. I think it's a really good investment. Nobody, nothing, 0, zilch, nada. So we decided to go visit some of my current sponsors, that being By Garrett. Went to saw Yukio at the booth, hung out, felt nice. So we went to go see Radium Engineering. I think it was their first year at SEMA. So that was really awesome to get some FaceTime with those guys. Love them to death. Also went and visited Turbosmart, who had jumped on. So got to go hang out with those guys. So that was cool. It was nice having some positivity at SEMA after being denied hundreds of times previous to that. So we wanted to end the day on a positive note, so we ended the day after going to see all my current sponsors, and it was fantastic. So we retired for some much needed naps. As you know, SEMA drains the living force out of you after one single day of walking around. It's just how SEMA is. It's what it's for. It's a soul drainer, especially if you're trying to pitch sponsorships. Of course, we went out that night. We went to a few of the industry parties, and going to the industry parties at SEMA, again, my first time going there, we were just there as spectators. Being kind of an insider at SEMA, I guess to say, is a totally different experience. Because I had been doing Formula Drift with Danny George all season, I knew a lot more people than I would have otherwise. So we got let into parties and we got invited to other places that had happenings. And these happenings, 9 times out of 10, happened to have free alcohol or open bars. So we would be at the Gran Turismo party or the Hanook party or the X party, and it was free drinks everywhere. So it was just like you walk around 15 or 16 miles in one day and then you go drink the living socks off of yourself for free usually, and go to these crazy parties where these gigantic companies rent the entire club out and you have to be in there as part of the industry. SEMA is nuts when you go to it in this respect. It's really cool to see all the cars and stuff, but I think a reason why most people go to SEMA is for the parties. Literally for the parties, because they are insane. Speaking of alcohol, now we had made it a goal the night before to talk to all of the clutch companies that we could in the morning. A clutch is a very important thing to have in drifting because you are very, very rough on it. I was hard on my clutch in Pro-Am and probably went through one during the season, so technically 2 clutches in one season. In Formula D, with the higher horsepower levels and how aggressive you have to be, I was planning to do maybe 2 or 3 clutches in a season instead. So clutches were really high on our list because they're an expensive ticket item. And if you're having to replace those all the time, if you replace 2 twin disc clutches, I mean, you're at $4,000 almost. And it's, anyway, so clutches were high on our list. So we started the next morning bright and early, hungover as hell, trying to pitch sponsorship to the major clutch company. Now, all of those guys that we had had the meetings with had made it very clear that they weren't interested. XD was like, we already have guys that drift. OS Geiken was like, you're not Japanese. ACT was like, who are you? It was so dejecting. It was just like, okay, we get it. We suck. We understand. It's okay, fine. God. So we headed over to Spec. I didn't have very high expectations just because of how the morning had been going already. I was bummed. I was still hungover at this point. And we were down to 2. We were down to Clutch Masters and Spec. And like I said, we went to Spec and they were super friendly with us right from the get-go. Like down home Southern comfort. And we were just like, whoa, this is different. This feels different than all of these other big companies. This feels like it's more family driven. And I was like, okay, I can get into this. They sat us down, they got us drinks. It was like, what is happening right now? This is so different. We waited for the marketing manager. They made a meeting for us. We went into their little area on these couches where they did that, and we made our pitch. Like, hey, we're going to run a full season of Pro 1 and Pro 2. We're going to have Motorcycle versus Car Drift Battle 4 come out, so whatever vehicles we're going to use, we'd love to use your clutches and put stickers and stuff on the car to make you guys happy. I'm going to make social media posts and etc, etc, etc. And they were very interested in what we had to offer, which again was totally different. They were asking probing questions like, well, how many other trips are you going to do? What other kind of marketing stuff can you do for us? And I was just like, well, we have answers for all of these. We were literally the first company to ask us these questions. So thank you for doing that in the first place, because I get to practice. So we went through the whole meeting, gave them the whole spiel, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, wait, what? We? And that was it. We had our first official sponsor of SEMA. We agreed upon a product-only deal where they would give me 2 twin disc clutches and 4 extra discs, and we would re-up that for the next season, and so on and so forth. I just had to give them some documentation of the install and give them some love on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, etc., etc., etc. And they would provide me with clutches for the season. And if I needed more than that for other projects or anything, to hit them up. And I was like, this is amazing. You guys are the best. And this relationship has continued to this day. I still use Spec Clutches in all of my cars, and they sponsored our season last year. So our top 3 drivers got a free clutch, like a 50% discount and a 30% discount on a clutch. So they've even been sponsoring my Drift Series. So thank you to Spec for jumping on board with me back in 2013 when nobody else did. You guys were a beacon in the darkness that was SEMA for us. Cheers to that. Okay, so one sponsor down, we were golden, we had clutches. It felt like we had 10 million more people to talk to, and I was just dreading every moment of it. We skipped Clutch Masters because I didn't even want to deal with the rejection, because we already had Spec, and I was super pumped, so we just left that one alone and continued on to a few other smaller companies and met up with Matt again for lunch. Now, Keith and I had decided not to tell Matt that we got Spec as a sponsor because I didn't want to pay 10% of $4,000 in clutches to Matt for no freaking reason, since they didn't do any work to get the sponsor in the first place. I wasn't going to try to ask Spec for money because I was already happy with just having the clutches. And I knew that Matt might have scared them away by asking for $30,000 plus 20 clutches, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So I just, Keith, don't mention Spec. I don't want them to know. And we didn't. So we talked to Matt, and Matt was like, well, how'd your day go? I was like, we got some maybe things, we got some no things, and mostly no things, and how was your day? And he was like, well, the people that I talked to yesterday decided that they did not want to do it. I have a couple more meetings today, and blah, blah, blah. And we're just like, yeah, sure, whatever, idiot. We did have one preordained meeting at SEMA, and this was the big one. This was for tires. And this would be with Paul Joe, which was the then motorsports manager and a whole bunch of other titles for Hanook Tires USA, who is now the Nexon guy. But I had gotten to know Paul all through the season with Danny George. And so I had talked to Paul and said, hey, I've got my license. I'm going to try to run Formula Drift in 2014. And Paul said, well, talk to me at SEMA and we'll see what happens. And I was friendly with Paul at this point, but I didn't know how to take that statement. Like, what does that even mean? And then so I just kind of let sleeping dogs lie. I didn't want to push it any. I never asked again, and just kind of continued to do a good job for Danny, do a good job for Hanook, because Danny was a Hanook driver, represent myself well at Formula D events, and put in time with Paul and all the Hanook guys. And hopefully that would have paid off in the future. So I sent a text to Paul before and said, hey, we're going to SEMA. When would you like to meet? And he was like, day 2 at X time. And I was like, sick, we will be there. I'll see you then. And this time was quickly approaching. So I shot Paul a text and said, hey, Paul, we're going to be there in about 15 minutes. And he was like, I'm in a crazy big meeting that's running over with some execs from Honda or something like that. And I'll be out in about 15 minutes. We'll chat and we'll be good to go. Tires, as you know, in drifting are the most important part of what we do. It is the most expensive part of what we do if you're not building a pro car. Tires are freaking expensive. And when you're running the widest possible tire that you can with the best compound, it gets exponentially more expensive than running the takeoffs that you get from the local BMW dealership. So let me break this down. You get about 2 runs out of a set of tires. You get 4 hours of paid practice on Thursdays. You can get between 10 and 20 runs in that 4-hour period if nothing breaks, you're not making changes, and you don't have any mechanical, electrical, etc. issues that you have to deal with. If you're just running practice and you just want to get the course down, you can do a lot of laps during that paid practice. So multiplying that 10 to 20 laps times 2 is 20 to 40 tires in a single day just for practice. Now at retail, a 265/40/18 Hanook Ventus RS3 came in at around $280 US. So if you came into Formula D right off the street and you paid retail for your tires at $280 a pop, one day of drifting would cost you between $5,600 and $11,200 for 4 hours of drifting. That's one freaking day. That's one practice day. Now, if you were to run practice, qualification, and made it all the way to the podium the next day, let me break that down for you as well. So, if you made it all the way to numero uno with no one more times, which is a very large rarity in Formula D, you'd use 8 tires or more during practice, 4 for qualifying, because you'd use 2 for one run and 2 for a next run. There's no sense in using the same set of tires, detrimental to your qualifying efforts. You'd use 2 for top 32, 2 for top 16, 2 for top 8, 2 for top 4, 2 for top 2, or 2 for consolation prize if you were going for third. Again, with no one more times, that's 24 more tires that you just used, aka $6,720 at retail. You are now sitting at $12,320 to $17,920 US for one weekend of drifting. That's insane. That is literally insane. Now, nobody pays retail that's in Formula D, and if you do pay retail, it's just because you don't care about sponsorships and you're already rich, so you can just buy whatever tires you want. Now, many of the companies offer driving programs that lower that cost down to about $100 per tire for that size that I mentioned above. And I would say 90% of the time, most of the drivers in FD, especially if you're new, don't get new tires, and they are paying for those tires. At $100 a pop, that's over 50% off retail. That's still $4,400 to $6,400 in a weekend. And that's not including if you do Pro 2, so you can basically double that. And it just gets nutty. Like, it was nutty. If I did not get a sponsorship, there was absolutely no way I was going to be able to run Formula D. That $40,000 that I had set aside, which was half of my 401k, did not include money for tires. Like, if I had to pay for tires, I probably would have dropped out because I just couldn't. Anyway, now that I've got that out of the way, my meeting with Paul was coming up fast. I was super nervous, super anxious. I didn't know what was going to happen because, like I said, Paul was very hard to read, and I didn't understand, I just didn't understand anything about how tires worked. I didn't know. I had tried with other companies and been denied and been offered the driver program, and it was just like, well, I'm doing professional motorsport. I cannot afford to buy these tires. I'm sorry. So this was literally my only opportunity for tires, and I really didn't want to blow it. Now, the Hanook booth was insane. It was this 2-story container thing with bridges and stairs everywhere, and they had XFD cars there and other cars and regular cars and race. Huge booth, gigantic presence at SEMA. And I was like, whoa. And all of the important people are upstairs doing their meetings, including Paul, who had just texted me, hey, we're still going to be about 15 minutes late. Sorry, I'll be down in a second. Just go hang out. And I was like, I am not leaving this booth until Paul comes out. I do not want to screw this opportunity up because the moment he comes out and I'm not here, he's going to be right back into another meeting. We just checked stuff out and chatted and hung out, and I think I got autographs from the Hanook girls and got autographs for Scotty and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About a half an hour went by and Paul popped up out of nowhere. And I was like, all right, man, good to see you. We greeted, I gave him a hug. It was nice to see him. And I was like, all right, we're ready to give you my pitch. And I was like, we've been practicing a lot and getting denied over and over and over again. So let's do this. And the next words out of his mouth would set the stage for me in FD in ways that I literally couldn't imagine at the time. So Paul looks at me and he says, you're good. I don't need your pitch. Throw that garbage away. And I was like, what? He was like, I'm super busy. Let's talk after SEMA and we'll organize everything. And I was like, okay, thanks, Paul. Good talk. Great meeting, man. Oh, I didn't get tires. So screwed. Again, not knowing how to take Paul's words was just eating at me, so I left more confused than I was before I went into the meeting. Did I have tires? Did I not have tires? What does that mean? Do we have to have another meeting after this meeting? What do I do? I don't know. I don't understand. So I text Danny. I was like, Paul said this. And Danny was like, haha. And I was like, oh man, don't tell me that. And I was like, for real, what does it mean? And he was like, you, sir, are now a Hanook driver and you're going to get free tires. And I was like, how the hell do you know that out of what he just said? And it was 50-50 on what Danny had said. My own soul was telling me no, but Danny was telling me yes. But Danny told me yes for a lot of things he shouldn't have. Now again, we did not tell Matt from Connexions with an X that this was on the table because there was absolutely no way I was paying 10% of almost 60 or 70 grand worth of tires. Just no way. So we were just gonna be like, yep, we're paying for tires, so you technically owe me 10% because I'm paying for... Anyway, we just didn't tell them that. Speaking of Connexions with an X, they had 0 for us on day 2 as well. So we'd now gone a month and 2 days into SEMA, and I had $10,000 paid out to these guys, and they had 0 prospects for me. None. But through hard work of our own, we had a clutch sponsor and 90% tire sponsor, maybe. Things were okay now. I mean, at least we could do Formula D with my budget, tires, and clutches. I think we could make it through just fine. So we decided to, again, leave SEMA on a positive note, and then we went and got crazy. Night 2 was the night of the Formula Drift party, so we took some naps, and then we got ready to head out. Keith and I met up with Danny George, and we were all standing in line to go into the Formula D party, and I can't remember what club it was at, but Danny George and I were making these jokes that, so we had to stand in this long line to get into this Formula D party. There was another line next to us, so we were like, oh, that must be the Frederick Osba line, because that's the jaw line. Get it? Because he had his own... and he's got the... Dad jokes aside, we ended up going inside to the FD party, which there was free alcohol for the FD drivers and teams, which I was technically part of, so we got to drink for free. Hanook had their own little booth space roped off, and Paul waved us over because Danny was a driver, and I was technically a future driver, maybe? And Paul wrapped his arm around me and immediately handed me a Johnny Walker Blue Label, which is an expensive thing, and he had a whole bottle of this stuff, so he was just going to town on some Johnny Walker Blue Label, and I was like, Paul likes Scotch. This is fantastic. I like Paul even more now. So we hung out and interacted with all the other Hanook guys. Forsberg was there, all the other Hanook dudes, Osbo. We took pictures, and it was a good time. Like, that was, I think, my favorite SEMA party just because it was triumphant. We had gotten them as a sponsor and been accepted into the clan, as so it were. We talked to a bunch of the other drivers, people, crew, it'd been the people we'd been hanging out with all season, so just seeing it at SEMA was just an extension of what we had already done all year. But we felt like VIPs. It was really awesome to be the main subject of a party, and they did all these awards, and they had FD on all the screens. It was just an awesome experience to be involved with. I drank way too much that night. We got like 2-hour nap, and then we had to be back at SEMA bright and early to try to pitch my drift career to more people that didn't want to hear about it. And that is where I'm going to end this story. Tune in next Monday to hear the closing of my SEMA chapter, how many sponsors I didn't get, and the final closing thoughts that I had, and antics and lawsuits that followed with Connexions with an X. I love you all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next year. Officer Dan, out.